How do you win your Social Security disability claim if you're filing for disability benefits, if you're currently receiving disability benefits, how to make sure you keep it? That we're talking about work CDRs, the continuing disability reviews, the medical CDRs. And we have a special guest today, Tara G. She was a former Social Security disability program expert. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining our team there. So Tarji is also doing appointments with us as well. So if you need help filing for disability, she is the go-to person. And let me explain. This is a perfect matchup here because I worked at the Social Security Administration. I ran the third business Social Security office in the country. I was also, before I became a manager, I was what's called a Title II CS, Title II of the Social Security Act. And those are the people that do retirement benefits, Medicare, spouse benefits, and Social Security disability insurance. So I've taken hundreds of thousands of disability claims. And then once we take the claim, check to make sure everything is there, person is insured and everything, and then we send it to DDS, Disability Determination Services. And that's where she worked. So a lot of people don't know that. They think once they send it to Social Security, then it's done. But the DDS is our state agencies, and they're the ones that make the medical determination. So when people file the disability claim, they go down to local Social Security office or they file it online, they push the button. Once the Social Security office is done with it, what do y'all start doing to it up there?
Yeah, so once the Social Security office does the technical review and it comes to DDS, we begin the medical review process. So that you typically know that process has started when you start getting forms in the mail, and you will get an intro letter that says we're the office that makes the decision based on Social Security. That letter usually includes a function report that you fill out to let Social Security know how your function is limited by your disability. And it often includes a work history report. While you're completing those documents, they are also requesting medical records from all of the medical sources and reviewing those records as they come in. Once those records are complete, if it's a complete record and they do not have to request any exams, I won't say that there is specific information that Social Security is looking for in your record, but if the record is not a complete record, missing any sort of information, Social Security may request an exam for you, a mental or physical exam, to get that complete information. Once the medical review is complete, then there is a vocational review that the examiner does to determine, considering your vocational factors, whether or not you can continue to work. And then that write-up is completed, a doctor signs it, and you get your decision. Before you get your decision, the Federal Quality Review Office may or may not review your claim because those reviews are random. So Federal Quality Review can review your claim. If they get it, that may add some additional processing time. And if they okay it, then you get your decision in the mail.
Okay, so what part of the cog of that super large wheel were you part of? You worked in DDS and you also worked at other places. We want to give our regular viewers out there.
Yes, I was a part of the entire wheel. So it starts at the DDS, and what I mean by the entire wheel, there are different levels that a case, like the life of a claim. So it starts at the DDS. If your claim is allowed at the DDS, it may or may not be reviewed by quality, like I said, and then you get your decision. If your claim is denied by the DDS, you can do reconsideration. It'll go back to the DDS for another review. If it's denied again, you may or may not request a hearing and go before the ALJ. So my experience includes being the disability examiner, reviewing the cases at each of those decision levels. So at the initial level, at the reconsideration level, at the CDR level, child cases, anything that happened with that disability case, I was reviewing. Beyond that, I was a hearing officer at the Disability Determination Division, and that is when you've already been on disability, your claim has come up for review at CDR and you were denied at CDR. If you were denied at CDR, then you request a hearing, and that hearing is before an administrative hearing officer. And I was administrative hearing officer. Beyond the DDS, I worked at a federal quality review center, and I also worked at headquarters writing disability policy. So I have worked claims from beginning to end. I've also reviewed claims at the judicial level to ensure that the ALJs are following policy correctly. So,
Wow.
right.
Okay.
So from DDS to as far as a claim can go, I've reviewed it.
All right. So let's what you talked about a lot, and we've got so this is also a live Q&A. So if you're joining us, if you're thinking about, you or someone you know are thinking about filing for disability benefits, we'll talk throughout the hour about all of it and answer all your questions. We'll talk about what the difference between SSI is and SSDI, and what a little bit more detail on the consultative exams and those CDR processes. She mentioned continuing disability reviews. That's how essentially they kick you off of disability benefits if they determine
maybe
Social Security, or maybe not, right? Yes. Based on the work CDRs and the medical CDRs, continuing disability reviews. If you go back to work, then there are someone already threw something in there. Disability is a joke. Half of the disabled aren't. Time to clean house and get those criminals off the payroll and use that money for people who are truly disabled. Social Security is everybody that's ever filed for disability. There's a myth out there that everybody gets denied for disability the first time, and I've got that on my website that's not the fact. I'm sure you approved hundreds of thousands of claims the first time. I have as well. Do some people get better almost immediately and go back to work, or whatever the case may be? A lot of people don't understand that when you're receiving disability benefits, you are 100% allowed to work. And I've got that on my website. If you go to mygovexpert.com there and you click on the disability tab and you go into working and benefits, it tells you all about that you are allowed to work. Everybody wants you to go back to work. If you're able to go back to work, Congress has set up a bunch of work incentives for you to allow you to try to go back to work. It's called a trial work period. And then after that 9-month trial work period, then you've got your extended period of eligibility where you can work as long as you stay under a certain limit. So there's a lot of people out there that, well, my neighbor's, on Social Security disability and they're working. Well, they're allowed to work if they stay under a certain amount. If they go over that amount, then that's what triggers the whole work CDRs and all the rest of it. Do people scam the system? Yes. Do people scam credit cards and home loans and auto loans? And there's scammers out there. But it's very, very difficult, depending on your disability, to get disability. Some people are approved immediately. And I always say that's kind of a bittersweet thing, because if your disability is approved by a compassionate allowance almost immediately, then that means you unfortunately have a very, very, very serious disability. But it's a long, drawn out process. What are we looking about? When I used to take claims at that time, we used to tell people you'll get a decision within 3 to 6 months. What are we looking at? You just got out of the agency this year, right?
I did. I just left the agency in March of this year.
Hey, if you need help with Medicare, Medicare Advantage, Medicare supplements, Part D plans, make sure you reach out to my partners at Chapter Medicare. I looked for a place that would help you all out, and Chapter Medicare knocked it out of the park. They've got excellent customer service. They look at every single plan in your area, and their help is always 100% free. Give them a call, and they'll see if they can help you out, and tell them Dr. Ed said hi.
But as far as the time frame goes, I don't think that's an unreasonable time frame, but time frames are not hard lines in the sand, because there are so many factors that have to be considered in this process. When Social Security starts that review, the first thing they do is request records from the medical sources that you provided. If you happen to forget a medical source and we can see in that record that your doctor referred you to someone, we're going to get the records from the doctor that you were referred to. So all of that, you can't, and we also don't know how long it's going to take those records to come in. Now, there is a time frame. We give the doctors a time frame to return those records within, but depending on how important the record are, we may extend that time frame. We may make calls to the doctor's office to see if we get those records, because it would be really important to the decision. So those are factors that we can't necessarily account for upfront. So I don't think 3 to 6 months is an unreasonable estimate of how long it might take. That's reasonable.
A lot of people out there in the front offices, the Social Security offices, are also telling people 6 to 9 months because they've cut thousands of people. Because sometimes you can't even if you file online, that's one thing. Someone still has to look at it in the Social Security office, and whether your local Social Security office has employees, that's a whole different issue. But if you schedule an appointment, then you probably won't get an appointment for another month or two. So that usually adds to it, unfortunately. One question that we get a lot is when they're filing for disability, people are filing for disability benefits, should they take all their medical records down to their appointment at the Social Security Administration?
No. No, and this is why. What Social Security needs to know is the medical doctors, both physical and mental, that you've seen within the last 2 years. So if you know those doctors by name, they're going to request the records. Even if you submit those records, we have to request those records. So it's just extra work for you that's unnecessary. And the reason for that is you may leave something out. You may submit, a 70-page document that was originally in 170 pages. So we just, in order, and it's really to the claimant's benefit, you don't want to omit anything because you don't necessarily know what the most important part of that record is. So Social Security is going to request the record directly from the source, even if you bring those medical records. So the most important thing to have is who you saw and when you saw them.
Yeah, I've been telling people that for years. It's you don't need to submit your medical records. If you want to, then the Social Security employee will scan it in, send it up to the Disability Determination Service. But number one, don't wait. If you're going to file for disability, if you're unable to work because of a disability, don't say, well, once I get my medical records next month or the month after, then I'll go ahead and do it. No, you just lost a month. Just as the same thing. If you're going to be filing for divorce spouse benefits or something like that, or, oh, I'll wait till I get my divorce decree. No, schedule the appointment now because you might lose a month or two.
Yeah.
So it's important that you start the process.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, even if you don't have any medical records, if you feel like you're disabled, you feel like you can no longer work because of a condition, or you've stopped working because of a condition, but you haven't been to the doctor at all, go ahead and apply. Because, Social Security is tasked with reviewing that disability. So I've reviewed hundreds, thousands of claims where they had no medical records. And those claims are allowed too, because we will get an exam to evaluate whatever the condition is that's being alleged.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for adding that, because we get a lot of people to say, well, I haven't been to the doctor for a while. And there's going to be a lot more people like that because of the Affordable Care Act. They're losing the subsidies. So millions of more people are going to be without health insurance, without health care. And they're going to say, yeah, I'd like to file for disability, but I've got no medical records. You do not need medical records. You file, you tell Social Security, the Social Security employee, what your issues are, why you can't work, where you worked before, all that stuff. And then the Social Security employee sends it up. And if you all determine that you obviously need medical records, then you do the consultative exam, the CE, right? Where you send the person to a Social Security contracted, not a Social Security, it's a private doctor, but it's someone that's contracted with Social Security or DDS that is within that specialty, correct?
Correct. So if it's physical, it'll be a physical doctor. And if it's mental, it will be a psychiatrist or psychologist. Yes. And these doctors, this is another myth. So myth buster here. These doctors do not work for Social Security. these are independent doctors who have agreed to do a certain amount of exams for doctors, because for Social Security, I'm sorry, because oftentimes these doctors have their own patients. They do not just do exams for Social Security. So they do a certain amount of exams, and you may have, it vary for some doctors who do more than others. So you may have, doctors in certain areas where they're the only doctor in that area. You have that in more rural areas. So you may have neighbors or friends who all saw the same doctor, and that may just be because that's the only doctor that's available within a certain mile radius, and not necessarily that that doctor works for Social Security, because none of them do.
Perfect.
And they do a standard exam. They do a standard physical exam. That physical exam does include certain things that Social Security needs to have to make a decision on certain things. So if you allege a back impairment, there needs to be range of motion and specific information about your back. Sometimes you may go to a doctor regularly and they don't include range of motion because they're the doctor you see all the time. So you may think, I go to the doctor all the time. Why is Social Security sending me to this exam? And it's for reasons like that. There is no range of motion. There is no full exam of your spine, and that information is just missing because oftentimes you see your doctor, they refill your prescription, and they don't do all those specific things.
They're trying to make you better, not necessarily determine whether you can go back to work or anything like that. So that's, yeah. All right, we've got a question here, Kim. Did they really approve 3714, and for everyone who will get it? No, so that's just how much you get from Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI. There's difference. There's SSI and SSDI. Social Security Disability Insurance is what you paid into. If you paid into it for 10 years and you're currently insured, there's two different statuses there. But it really depends on your work record, how much you actually paid into Social Security. But yeah, if you paid into it max for 35 years and you are applying for disability, you could get close to over $4,000 nowadays as your high benefit amount. And if you are approved for disability benefits and you have children under the age of 18 or that became disabled before the age of 22, they can also get benefits on your record. So if you're receiving disability, they will get up to 50% of your full benefit amount. It's called the PIA, primary insurance amount. So they'll get up to 50%. And then if you have a spouse that's taking care of those children, particularly a child under the age of 16 or one that became disabled before the age of 22, the spouse can also get benefits on your record as well. There's a family max. There's a maximum that could be paid out to a family on somebody's disability or retirement, or even someone that's deceased. So there is a limit there, but it really depends on how much you actually paid into the system. And that's not what Tarji does. That's when Social Security takes the disability claim, make sure everything is all the package is done there correctly, everything is included, make sure the person is insured, make sure they're currently insured. That's two different things. And then they send it up to DDS, and DDS does all their stuff. And then when DDS, the Disability Determination Services, sends it back, that's when the Social Security employee that runs the numbers and starts to determine, how much are you going to get? Is there children? Do we need to reach out and take an application for the child and all the rest of it? So,
yeah. The DDS, or the Disability Determination Service, is responsible for the medical portion of the claim.